What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I make music as Afro DJ Mac, and today I am here with Christopher Postill. How are you, Christopher?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Happy to get a chance to talk to you. Christopher, just so everyone knows, runs a site called soundslikeenearful.com, and it's a place where people can get music for productions of like podcasts or I guess kind of anything, right?
Yeah, that's the idea. I have a affinity for podcasters, so I talk a lot about podcasting. But yeah, any YouTubers, filmmakers, anything.
Right. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the site. It's very nice, very nicely laid out, and some great music.
Cool. Thank you very much. So it's a relatively new project. Anyone who knows me knows it Sounds Like an Earful as a idea has been around for many years, and it's gone through basically all the stages it possibly could have. It started as a podcast itself, and then it became a podcast studio, and we were producing multiple shows. And then it became a podcast editing house where it's still we still do a little bit of that. And then now I'm kind of trying out this whole, what I'm calling a music supply, where I'm creating original music. And yeah, like you said, offering it for royalty-free licensing for any sort of creative people.
Cool. Yeah, and I noticed you sort of have like you said, an affinity towards podcasting where you're offering it at a very reasonable rate for people.
Trying to, yeah. I want to, there's different licenses that people can purchase, and I'm kind of still playing with exactly the best way to make it accessible to people, but also something that could have, longevity. It's about finding a nice price point that people can afford, but I do want it to be something that people on shoestring budgets can afford to play with, because I've been on shoestring budgets for so long in my life that,
right.
You kind of gotta pay your dues to that community too.
Yeah, I guess you have a good understanding of like the work that goes in to make the music, yet you also have the understanding of the person that needs to purchase the license and how difficult 100%. That can be too. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that's cool. So it's a nice thing you've found. It kind of reminds me of like when you're playing shows or something and the venue is run by someone else that plays music live too. So
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they kind of, there's that unspoken, oh, you get it.
Yeah.
A little bit, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Because sometimes, unfortunately, we'll find a sort of like us versus them thing with the musical act and the promoters or the venues. But when it's people that are, kind of have their foot in both worlds, you find a nice balance, a nice understanding.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Everybody's sort of expectations and needs are at least considered,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to like try to rip off the person you sort of see yourself in, a younger version of yourself.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah.
Right. So you have a lot of experience in podcasting then.
Yeah. So let me try and think back here now. Maybe it was almost 8 or 9 years ago. Mm-hmm. I started, like, I think a lot of people when, Radiolab and those sort of big ones started coming out, there's a lot of audio-ish people who were like, what? How they're doing that? Like, it was kind of this weird cross between talk radio and especially Radiolab was like they were doing musical things with storytelling and like the way that it would weave in and out of voice and music. So it's just kind of this whole new world where I can play with this, and I've never really thought of it that way before. So I got obsessed with it, and I spent way too much time. I was like, I've always had my day job, which is I work as a sort of graphic artist, web designer guy. But at nights, I would just come home and spend 10 hours sitting in front of Ableton, trying to like put little clicks in the right place and cut up voices so that they sounded kind of rhythmic and just playing in that sense. So yeah, that got me started a long time ago. And then I was doing my own podcast, which was also called Sounds Like an Earful for years. But I never really sat down to define what it was. It was kind of just a show about life. Okay. I had a friend and she would call me up every week and we would just chat. So one day we got talking about whether or not she wanted to have children. So then that episode became an episode about having children or not. and I would then go and call other people. So it was just this sort of general topic show, and it was great. And I met some really cool people. But eventually I just got burnt out. I was doing it for maybe 3 or 4 years, and podcasts are hard. I mean, you of all people, I'm sure know, podcasts take a lot of energy and time and editing and all that stuff. It's a hard thing to keep up.
Well, if I'm being honest, a lot of the editing is a part I leave out of the show. I do pretty much deliver it as it turns out. Sometimes my dogs start barking, or something uncontrolled happens where maybe the internet drops out or something. We got to go fix that and take that out. I'm not going to leave the 5-minute pause of like, are you there? Are you there?
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Can you hear me? But it does. It's actually a quicker thing I do, and it's sort of by design, mostly because I knew if I made it a little too in depth, too much editing, too much, there's a lot you can do. And like you said, Radiolab is really fun with all the audio and the way they use it to tell the story. But I just kind of knew that, like, with all that I'm trying to do already, that it would never really make it for very long if I was doing too much.
Right.
And a lot of
kind of had to design it to be simple.
Yeah. And a lot of the podcasts I enjoy the most are pretty much unedited, pretty much just people talking, and not a real script, and nothing. It's like anything. I guess there's different formats. There's like different.
Totally.
It's become an art where there are some people that are just talking and just having conversations, and other people are really putting together, weaving these stories really nicely.
No, exactly. Yeah, totally. And I mean, to your credit, I think and I dealt with this when I was doing the podcast. Some weeks I just wouldn't have a guest. Mm-hmm. And so I'd try to put a show together as one person just talking to a mic. And that's a hard thing. Like, I mean, it's not hard, but it's a hard thing to do well. And I think that, to your credit, I was going to say that, like, your show, I like the episodes when it's just you talking into a microphone. Like, those are some of my favorite ones, because it's like, I don't know what it is. There's just something about the way that you present it. Maybe because you're a teacher. You're good at that.
I'm thinking, I get a lot of practice. I get a lot of time to just talk in front of people that are kind of a literally captive audience.
Right.
If they raise their hand to use the bathroom.
But I mean, it is like, there's definitely, I think that shows like that are great. But yeah, Sounds Like an Earful originally for me was a new musical outlet. Mm-hmm. It was like, I'm not in bands anymore. I'm not really playing music a whole lot. I'm going to start a podcast as a way to get back into music. So it was this thing where, for me, the passionate part of me about that project was doing the editing and stuff like that. But it's a really tough thing to crank out well-edited musical things every week. Like you say, it's huge, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know how long it takes to produce like a 2-minute song.
Right.
It's
totally.
hours and hours of work. So yeah, I could only imagine. I guess that's where the burnout came in for you.
Yeah, exactly. So there just came a time where, and I mean, life happens too. And that's a whole other thing about podcasting where, life doesn't stop in between the podcasts. So it's like, there's that whole thing, keeping it going. And so eventually around 3 or 4 years into it, I said, okay, well, I love doing this, and I really did, but I'm going to take a step back from doing my own podcast. But it was something that I had met a lot of other podcasters, and just sort of on Twitter and things like that, got really sort of involved and just dug it. It was just kind of my community at the time. And I mean, I still kind of consider it my community, but so then I started just saying, okay, well, maybe I'll just take a backseat on doing my own show, and I'll help other people with some editing of their show. And then that's when Sounds Like an Earful became this sort of editing house.
Right. Well, that's still kind of cool because you get to do like the audio end of it, the kind of playing with sound.
Yeah, totally.
Without having to also come up with the material, which is, can be a lot for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's still a lot of fun. Like, I think I was mentioning to you, one of the shows that I still work on that came out of that period, this was maybe 5 or 6 years after I had started podcasting, is this show called Sleep With Me by a guy named Drew. Well, everyone knows him as Scooter. And his show is by design boring. It's intentionally really, really boring. because he wants to help people get to sleep.
Uh-huh.
So he tells these adult bedtime stories and tries to make them as boring as possible so that there's no way you can make it to the end of a show without without falling asleep. And he's a really cool guy, and he's given me the opportunity to every 2 weeks we take a show and I just get to make an hour-long bit of sleep music that goes in behind his boring story.
Oh, cool.
Which is super cool because I'll be sitting here just playing weird drones and trying to put myself to sleep and being like, this is part of my gig. This is wicked, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a really fun idea, fun project.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really good.
I'm a big fan of making music for like specific purposes like that, where you're trying to go to sleep, you're relaxing or you're partying or whatever. It's a long drive. I find that really helps me make progress with my music.
Yeah, it's sort of a structure that you have to sit in. It gives you sort of parameters to work within. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because, when you just show up with nothing, planned, it's very easy to just kind of not have any direction and just start doing things, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It gets unfinished. But when there's that direction, that goal, there's obvious things like you're not going to do if you're trying to make bedtime music, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It rules out a lot of options.
Yeah, and it just sort of clarifies. It's kind of like, I could play this on an oboe or whatever. But I'm not going to play it on the oboe because that doesn't make sense in this context. Like it makes it clear sort of the directions you have to head in.
Yeah.
Which is part of part of a big reason why I've gone this music supply route, because I get to do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
I get to sort of say, okay, what's a context that someone might need music for? Oh, they've got a sad scene in their dramatic short film.
Right.
Okay, what would a really good sad scene sound like? And then that sets up this parameter where I get to just kind of play within,
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that approach. And it's evident in the work on Sounds Like an Earful Music Supply that you've got things like Carnival Big Beat, Under the Palm Shade. Like even just like your titles are very, are very indicative of the mood and the feeling that you're going to have in the song.
Right. Yeah, cool.
So one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you was you are a person that's managed to take your love of music and craft something productive with it, some sort of career and side work or whatever you want to call it, that you can sort of justify spending all this time doing, because it is a huge time consumer. And I guess I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what maybe were some of the hurdles you faced along the way to like this. It sounds to me like your ultimate destination of this music supply, Sounds Like an Earful, is the result of like kind of a long winding road.
Yeah, but the longest, windiest road you can think of to get there, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think part of being a freelancer in general is always, you never really get to answer that question. Is it better to have a career, make a career out of my passion, or have a career and pursue my passion on the side? Because as soon as you make your passion your career, you start making concessions, and it's inevitable. It happens. Like, even no matter how closely you guard that, it happens. And it, and there's ways to manage that so it doesn't kill your passion, but it's always this kind of balancing act. And I've spent 32 years now trying, well, maybe not 32, but I've spent my whole life trying to figure out the balance of that. And I'll go, when I was in my early 20s, I'd be like, I figured it out. I know how this works, and I've got the right answer. And then my mid 20s, I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense at all. I feel the exact opposite. I just want a career and to do music on the side. And then I got to 30 and it was like, oh, wait, I want to go back to music because careers, whatever, it's this constant, because I mean, I'm lucky to have the freedom to be a freelancer, but it's this constant balancing act of kind of managing being passionate and not losing sight of that, but also, having a life and a house and a family and cars and all that stuff.
Right.
So anyways, that's a long tangent to say that essentially Sounds Like an Earful has been the sort of central trajectory through that constant balancing act. So I said, I got really passionate about podcasts. And so I said, this is my podcast thing. But then I tried to, and it was a total passion project there. It was just, I want to talk to people and ask big questions and make cool music. And then a few years later, it went to the exact opposite. I just want to edit other people's podcasts. I don't want all of the, I just kind of, I want to make this my career. And then it's just kind of swinging back now where it's kind of this thing where I'm trying this middle ground where it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to keep this as a bit of a side hustle, but, it's something that's not, that could potentially help pay the bills because I want to invest more time into it. And hopefully it can grow into a thing, it can grow slowly enough into a thing that I can manage it so that it doesn't erase my passion about it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Lots of sense, and something I've thought about quite a lot. Because the minute, like you say, the minute you make something your job, let's say you take music, you make it your job, you do sort of have to figure out ways to make money with it now. And that might mean not doing the artistic path the exact way you want it to be.
Yeah.
If I decide like I want to be a successful artist that bangs spoons on glasses and that's going to be my music, I have to sell that now. It's not just my fun creative journey that, it doesn't matter what it comes out like because I'm expressing myself. I'm now producing a product that I need to sell.
And at the same time, though, I think that the opposite of that is very liberating, where it's like, okay, I don't have to find a way to justify banging my spoons right now. I just need to make a good song for a sad, dramatic scene. It's this liberating thing where it's like, I have this purpose, even on the days when I'm not ready to stand up and tell everyone that banging spoons is the best thing I've ever done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you have to change the way you approach it a little bit. And that can be challenging, and it's one of the things that I actually love about having an actual day job that's consistent, and it gives me some freedom to try some new things out, to play around with it a little bit, to experiment. And if something falls flat on its face, it's not, I'm not going hungry for it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Which
And
maybe allows you to try things that you wouldn't try if you were on the line, right?
100%. And it allows you to sort of, and it's something you mentioned to me in our writing. I think we said it somewhere. It allows you to play the long game without having to make these like decisions for the short term, gain. You can put that off in the distance.
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes I do find that playing the long game, I think especially in today's day and age, it's so easy to get caught up in the short game. Yeah. Oh, I got to tweet this faster, and I got to retweet that and get so many followers, and I got to do this, and then that'll justify that I'm a good musician. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But playing the long game almost makes you and your art, making music, a bit immune to that noise, because you can just be like, okay, why am I doing this? Because in 10 years I want to be here or something.
Right.
Yeah, it clarifies things a little bit when you can set up a situation for yourself to play the long game, because you're not a dog chasing tires anymore. You have a trajectory that you're going down.
Yeah, it certainly freed me from having made decisions that I might not be so happy with in the future, like maybe an advertisement or something, or an endorsement for a quick, whatever amount of money. Whereas it kind of takes away from like kind of the big picture thing I'm trying to do. And I think this is like maybe a problem in a lot of things in our world, really. the short game versus the long game. Where take politics, where a politician wants to get reelected, so they'll do something that will get them there in the short term, maybe at the expense of a long-term problem that gets ignored. Or a business that, you know, it's you know, some evil corporation somewhere maybe that like will realize it's much cheaper to do this one thing as opposed to something for the long term that would be maybe better for everyone. I think that's a big problem we have in our world, honestly.
So what is your, out of curiosity, what's your, because I mean, I would say I totally agree with that. And I would say that the trend is favoring the short game rather than the long game. Right. So what's your motivation for playing the long game? What is it that, like, with the podcast and with all of the plugins and stuff that you release, like what's pulling you towards playing that long game?
Well,
or what was the original thing that pulled you there?
Well, I think that my long game in a lot of ways is really just doing work that I enjoy and that I'm proud of. And I can play around with that. Like, I don't have to say, you know, release. I mean, I remember a specific example of myself playing the short game is I released a dubstep pack, you know, and this was going a few years back. Dubstep was pretty hot at the moment, and it wasn't anything I was passionate about. I just figured I might be able to make a little bit of money off of it. And although I did like what I did in the end, when I started to do it, it was more like, all right, I want to just do something that'll make me some money. And you know, I don't love that feeling. I like it much more when it's like, this is something I want to work on and I want to see where it goes. And I think that the work has more long-term integrity when you do it that way.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, totally.
And you know,
that's definitely something. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not always an option. But I think when you're when you do have the freedom of not having to rely on it as the main source of income, the main you know, way you're putting food on the table, it does give you some freedoms. Of course, you know, there's the other side of, like, you know, where you get to spend your whole day doing only the thing you really want to be doing.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I don't know that the only thing I want to be doing is only sitting in the studio making music. You know, I do like to do other things too.
Enough.
I think it's important.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I think it's important to make good music, to have kind of an interesting life to inspire you with.
100%. Yeah. And that was a big thing. You know, I when I decided to start the music supply project, I was kind of like, well, what am I doing? You know, stock music, is there really need for more of that and all this stuff? And the answer I came to was that ultimately all I really want, all I'm chasing after is I get to wake up, I get to make a cup of coffee, I get to come out here to the studio and play for an hour and add something to that music supply. And hopefully it's useful for some people, and hopefully eventually it picks up some momentum and I get to spend 2 hours out here in the morning instead of the one. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, that's the ultimate goal for me. So you're right. I've definitely, and I mean, there's probably a few things on the supply right now that are like, oh, I made this thing because I thought people would like it, but it's not. Ultimately, I don't end up doing things I don't like because I'm lucky enough to have the freedom to do that, and that's not helping me get to that goal of just coming out here for an hour in the morning and enjoying myself and playing music still. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So being
motivated to play music,
you're enjoying just the process of it. And the
I think so, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, just the showing up and getting to do that and enjoy yourself, I think is that's important. That's why we got into this in the first 100%. Place, right? Because we enjoyed it.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's like, you know, sometimes you get the well, I think many people that ever started in music have the dream of being the rock star or you know, making that like all day, every day, nothing but, doing music, getting on the road and playing out and whatever it is. But sometimes there's a reality to that. I remember my first taste of this.
Right.
I was a kid playing Little League baseball. I loved baseball. Like, I mean, I still love baseball, but I was like, when I was a young kid, like I was gonna make being a Major League Baseball player my life's goal. And
Right.
there was a point when I realized, like, whoa, like these people in Major League Baseball are playing 162 games a year. That's like half the year right there. And they're also training in the off season, and it just occurred to me, like, I don't want to play that much baseball.
Right. That's not as fun as the thing that was happening in my head. Like the reality of it is like, oh.
Yeah, because I think it occurred to me like had to go to practice or something. Then we had a game, and I was like, practice, then a game, and then I kind of realized what the real truth of it is, and it just struck me that, like, it does seem like a great dream if I could have it in like little pieces, but the full meal is a little much.
I wonder if that's kind of, well, I was thinking about this the other day, and just sort of like, I mean, I know that you were in bands when you were younger and stuff too, and you're kind of chasing this dream then of being a bit of a rock star. You're like, I want to be the rock star. I think that's what I was doing, at least. It was kind of,
oh yeah, we would have loved that. Yeah,
totally what it was.
Well, we thought we would have loved
that's right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So then I was thinking the other day, sort of, what is it I'm chasing now with music, and like, what is this? Why am I still so excited about starting a new music project? And I think now it's almost just these little pieces. It's not that whole life of being a baseball player. Mm-hmm. I'm chasing the bit when you add the drum track and everything congeals and you're like, oh, that's exciting. Uh-huh. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You get that little 10-second taste of, oh, I like that. Mm-hmm. And if I can get that twice a week, then I think that's pretty good for me. Do you know what I mean? When things just kind of click and it feels really good, and you get that moment of, I did that and it came together and I'm really happy with it, then that's kind of all I think. I mean, I may change my mind in a month, but at this point, that's the thing that I'm chasing, not the life of a rock star. Do you know what I mean? Because of like what you just said, the life of a rock star isn't all that wonderful, I don't think. I think it's kind of hard and tiring, and sitting in a tour bus with other people farting, and
Well, I think it's punctuated with a lot of exciting moments, a lot of adrenaline,
of course,
a lot of action.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that other side of it where it is a nonstop grind, like you said, and being on the bus and every single night doing that is a lot of work. It's tiring.
Yeah.
And it costs you other things, like having your home, or having a pet dog, even, like having a relationship is often compromised with that, because it takes a special person that would want to be okay with that kind of life. And I just think that's hard. Yeah, absolutely. Probably harder than a lot of more like traditional jobs, I would think, just because at least you get some of that other kind of normalcy to your life.
Yep. And you're not on 100% of the time, you know? I feel like that life of a rock star demands a lot of you to be on, and you've been eating hamburgers for 2 months and you just can't be on. At least that's what I like. Again, I was not in any big bands ever, but the small tours that we did was just like, I just want to go home, man.
Yeah, I had a little small taste of that, but it was really only like about 2 weeks max at a time. But by the end of that, I wouldn't say I wanted to come home necessarily, but I was ready. I was ready to like eat properly again, get some exercise, totally. Sleep in a bed. Yeah.
Right.
Though I think it was a short enough time where the thrill didn't really go away. Of the,
yeah,
the tour.
Fair enough. That's cool.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's I think sometimes we don't realize what we're striving for, what we're wishing for. We see just maybe one part of it. And it's important to like
Yeah.
understand the full range and full dimension of what it really means to be involved in anything,
So
really. Even like
yeah,
the
and
freelance work or anything, there's still like a much deeper layer than I think meets the eye on the surface anyway.
100%, 100%, and also just find those small victories. I think is a huge thing. Like I know so many people who are just like, if I don't do this, I'm not successful, and I've failed. And it's like, man, just if you get that, like what I was just saying, if you get that feeling and you've made a song, like just let that be good. Let that be all right. It's not your ultimate goal. That's cool. Keep working on that. But I don't know. And this is something that I'm saying because I've learned it very much the hard way.
Yeah.
Just like it's even if you don't know exactly what it is that's motivating you to do the thing, identify some little victories that you can enjoy and let yourself enjoy them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to kind of for yourself make decisions about what will be a success, and if it's too external, if it's too many things that you have no control over, that's going to be really difficult. But like you said, if it's just getting that track moving with the drum beat and like, okay, like it's something I've done, or just the sheer practice and the time. I think something I liked about your site too was on the community roadmap you have there. You say it's an open. It says on the site an open game plan for the community moving forward. Can you tell us about that? Because you really do a nice job laying out like stage 1, stage 2. Like this is what it looks like when I'm successful here and here and here.
The truth about that is that that's a checklist to keep exactly what we're talking about. My aspirations in check a little bit. Mm-hmm. I want like this whole music supply. I really do, and I know everyone talks about community and community building nowadays and stuff, but like because I have done the podcasting thing and I know all these podcasts, I legitimately want people to come here and like be like, "Hey man, I really like that, banjo song. Could we have more of that stuff?" And then that'll help drive where this like the stuff that ends up in the music supply. And I want people to participate, and then I want to make it easy for them to do that. So the community roadmap that's on the site is essentially just a way of being like, here's where I think we could go. And then it's sort of, I've just set milestones of once we get to here, then I'll be able to make it so that you can search more easily. Once we get to this milestone, I'll be able to make it so that you can, if you want, buy a membership and download stuff rather than buying it each track that you like. You can just kind of play with some of the music supply stuff because you have a subscription service. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just trying to lay out sort of like, this is how this thing could grow. And again, like I said, that's as much for me to make sure that this thing doesn't, I am a sort of obsessive person. I get excited about stuff. So it's a bit of a, I wanted to map it out so that I didn't run off the rails and I'm going to take over Audio Jungle,
I think it's good to have kind of these realistic expectations of yourself. So just for people listening that aren't looking at the site at the moment, there's right now you have 3 phases on the community roadmap. And for phase 1, there's a list of about 6 different things that have to happen for phase 1 to be complete. And a couple of you got checked off already. And they include things like having a minimum of 25 freebies available for download, having 25 singles available for purchase, which is one of the ones that you've got checked off. And I think that's just a really nice way to sort of keep yourself reminded that you are making progress. Because when we do things...
Exactly, yeah,
like when we work on stuff, you're doing a little bit every day, you did a little more. It's easy to not see the progress if you're not keeping track of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yep.
So I think...
and also...
go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I also, hopefully, it's a way for it to... when someone buys a track, they're like, oh, he just made it so that we've made this many sales. So now we're on to phase 2. Like that's hopefully a way that I can rely on the community a little bit to help the site grow, and then people get to be a part of that a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, because now the people feel like they're helping and achieve this goal and
Exactly.
helping this community.
Which they are. Yeah, 100%,
Well, I think that's a big explanation behind the success of Kickstarter and sites like that.
Right.
Patreon even, where you kind of understand, I'm helping you do this. I'm helping you get there. And I know Patreon has the different goals you can set for yourself, which I think is great. Yeah. It's again like, hey everyone, we reached this goal. Now we can do this or that, which is, it's nice. It's good to have like a feeling of like you're involved in something and helping something grow, and I think people like that.
And I think that's, I mean, there's a lot of things to complain about the internet and privacy and all of this stuff, but I think that's one of the best things that's coming out of the internet is that idea that like, I mean, the music supply couldn't exist without it. I couldn't be a guy who comes out here in the studio and makes music and has fun doing it and releases it to people, and they get to use this music that's like maybe a little different than other stock music because, it's got sort of my flavor to it. And that thing couldn't grow. It couldn't exist without the internet allowing us to have stuff like that where people can, I mean, and maybe no one likes my style and it won't happen, but that's fine. But if they do, then this thing can become this cool community where, I don't know, we're making stuff together a little bit.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely an important point. I mean, so much of, what we're doing right now is all internet dependent. And
of course.
It's a powerful thing, the way it can bring people together. And I always joke around about it. It's one of the reasons I started the podcast. It's hard to find someone maybe on your street that's doing music production, that's involved, and that's having fun figuring out like a drum machine or a new effect or something. But on the internet, they're everywhere. And you can't go up to your neighbor. You can't pull your neighbor in your house and be like, hey, check out this drum machine. They might be like, oh, that's kind of cool, but it might not be something that they really care about.
100%. And I mean, I have friends who are my local friends in the little town I live in. And, because I started up an Instagram account for the new Sounds Like an Earful thing, and a few of them followed me just because they saw that I started it up, and they're like, what are you doing? Like, why would I buy music? I don't get it. But then there's other people who are like, oh man, this is so wicked. Here's a link to the podcast that I threw your freebie in or whatever, Oh yeah. So it's definitely, it shatters those barriers.
Yeah. When I first started putting stuff out, I had a lot of my friends were like, what's this Ableton you're always talking about? And I always get like funny questions like, what are you doing, man? Like, I see your videos come up, but I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, how did you address that? How did you answer that question?
Well, I explain it. I kind of simplified in that, like, I might say like it's music production, or I'm providing like other producers with sounds they can use. I don't go into too detailed unless the person is like, knowledgeable, but, keep it kind of something they can grasp a little bit.
Right.
I think
that's cool.
By now, like everyone just that knows me, but doesn't know that stuff, just ignores it, I think. There he goes again.
Which is okay.
His little videos.
Yeah. That's right.
Let's see. So one thing you mentioned, and I noticed right away when we're talking on the video, was the space you're working in. It's very fun looking. Right. It's very colorful. This is your garage, you said.
Yeah. So actually almost exactly a year ago this time, I had moved to Newfoundland for a few years. And then I had just moved back to Nova Scotia about a year ago. And I came back with the intention of buying a house, and I bought a nice house that's right here. And one of the reasons I bought this house was because there was this outbuilding, this garage. But the previous owner was a painter, so he had converted the garage into a painting studio. So I came in here and just sort of started drooling, and I was like, oh, I don't really care about the house, but the garage is super cool. I mean, the house is great too. I don't mean to play it down. But anyway, so yeah, the garage, I can't really show you the whole thing, but there's just sort of a wall of music stuff here, and then there's a dartboard and a fireplace down in the back, and then the one wall here is covered in pegboard that a good friend of mine painted a mural on. So it's kind of just my play space a little bit. It's very, very messy in here, but I like it that way.
Well, it seems to reflect like your personality and has like its own charm, and I must imagine that helps contribute to like the comfort if you're going to be spending a lot of time in there.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing.
I
think like setting up your space to be comfortable and kind of reflecting yourself and your personality a little bit is really important. It's something that can be easily like overlooked. It doesn't make a sound necessarily. It's not a new synth plugin, but it is valuable to like feel relaxed and comfortable. And I mean, I love having like some plants in the window and just a little life. I'm in a basement. It's a finished basement. Right. It's like part of the house, but it is still like I'm underground right now. It's like this blazing hot day in New York, and I'm underground. So it's like important like to get some natural light in, I think, and
totally
have it be.
And even sorry.
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, even on top of that, I don't know if I can show you, but there's right up here is a Sounds Like an Earful sign that I know a guy who has a sign making business, and I paid him a couple $100 to make me a sign, and I didn't really have a couple $100 to spend, and I don't really need the sign, but I think that just as an extension of that, it's super important to give your ideas, as silly as your friends like, man, what's your weird music video post, like what are you doing, as much as it doesn't pay the bills or doesn't make a sound like you say, it's super important, I think, to give your ideas that credence and be like, yeah, I need a sign for this because it makes me feel super excited to go work on that thing. Or do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. It's official now. It's legitimate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, my girlfriend is a very, very practical person, and she's like, what are you doing? That's like, I mean, she's not upset about it, but she's just kind of like, I don't get it. Why would you do that? Mm-hmm. It doesn't serve a practical purpose, but it's like, no, it's to keep, it's to make the romance of the idea better. It's to keep me motivated to like, do you know what I mean? It makes it, yeah, like you say, a real thing.
Yeah. I can remember being in a band, and we were kind of never really planning on being a real band. We had like a family party we played to first start off. And then like we got like a couple shows here and there just because, we're around people playing shows, and they just kind of came up. But once we got like a t-shirt printed and we got them, like, it was like I was printing out CDs for another project, and one of the deals through the company was like, you get some shirts too. And I made the shirts for our band, because I didn't really need them for the other project. So once we got the shirts, it's kind of like, oh, like, all right, we're a band now, we're official. We don't really have anything to do with these shirts yet, but okay, here we are.
That's it. Yeah. I think it's huge. And just for you, it's huge.
It's a mental empowerment or something going on there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, it's just cool. I think it's one of those things. There's certain things that are just, there's the bad cool, which is all this peer pressure when you're in high school and stuff. But then there's the good cool. It's just like, it's cool. You see it, and it's just like, yeah, man, that looks cool.
Nothing wrong with taking a little pride in your work and giving it like it's an honest shot and making it legitimate.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I had something I wanted to ask you. How long have you been doing Afro DJ Mac?
That work has been just about a little over 8 years officially, I guess. I started the website in 2011. No, that's 7 years then. 2011, it was like March, I think, 2011, where I actually like launched the site and started writing about making music. And that was the original idea. I was just going to kind of just write about it, document it, what I'm doing. I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know one day there'd be a podcast or I'd be releasing downloads for people. But
Right.
I think it was just important to start, just to get going. You can kind of like plan it out forever and think about what it could be and wait till everything's perfect. But I really believe in if you know you want to do something, just start doing it. It's the best way to become something.
Right.
Like, if you want to become a producer, start producing music. Don't worry about like what kind of genre you're doing or what kind of and any of that stuff. Just start, because I think a lot of times it's a good way to get out of actually doing it because we sort of overthink it.
100%. Oh, I got to be better before I really start. Yeah, I got to be perfect.
It's like, why? Who's listening to you anyway? Who's paying attention to you? No one cares yet. And the sad truth is no one may ever care. But to just start, just get going and don't worry about like if you're ready or not, because you'll figure out it. And usually it helps you understand what you need to do to get ready. And I
also think that a lot of sorry, I was just going to add that a lot of, I don't know about you, but a lot of the music that I've loved and a lot of the music that is kind of classic stuff isn't the best produced. It's not the best performed guitar solos. It's not the best stuff. It's the stuff from people who were hungry, not the people who had sat and practiced for 10 years,
Yeah. Well, we kind of
like,
learned
the
that.
The Pixies are awful, but they're the best.
How are they awful? I hear what you're saying, though.
But yeah.
Francis Black is not going to be singing opera or anything, but his voice is awesome for what they do.
100%. And that's the thing. I mean, they definitely didn't sit around being like, oh, guys, we should practice for another 5 years before we start this band. They just played the music and it came out really good.
Yeah. And I do believe that.
Sorry.
Like that. And I think we learned that when we got our computers and our quantizing and our auto tune, and we realized, hey, everything's perfect, but I don't like it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's too crystal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, a lot of times I like the rough demo better than the full studio project.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, go ahead though. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was going to ask you, after 8 years, have you had ups and downs? Where are you at after 8 years with it?
Oh yeah, it's always ups and downs. I think I try to stay consistent even when I'm having my downs a little bit, because one of the things I did early on is I was doing my Ableton Live packs, free Ableton Live racks, and I decided the first year I was going to make them weekly. And it was just every week I had to do something, whether I wanted to or not. I just really wanted to make it a year. I had that in my head. I can do this. I can do one pack every week. And it gave me that like discipline to get through it even when I don't want to do it. And sometimes those were the best things I made. Those were some of the coolest things, is when I didn't want to do it. I didn't have an idea and I didn't know where I was going, but I was going anyway. But you
had to show up.
Yeah, and I go through ups and downs all the time. Sometimes I feel like a wizard. I can make any kind of song or sound I want, and I feel so empowered. And I sit down and things sound great, and I love everything. But then there'll be like periods of time when it's just like I don't know, everything sucks. I don't know what I'm doing. Why is a big question. Like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the point? Yeah, there's like a constant like evil like supervillain or something in your head that's like trying to get you to quit all the time, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's hard to
And that's
fight.
like the whole. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just hard to fight, and it's just important to just keep swinging, you know? Like, don't stop the fight, or else you
Right.
will, you know, they win.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a big part of what I've heard you say this before, but that whole sort of, I don't know necessarily that it's the muse communicating through you, but it's not always you. Or like, just don't, I do this all the time. I put all of the pressure on me to make it good every time. And it's just like, just let it be, just play a bit and see what happens. And then, I don't know. I think that's, I always used to hear that idea of the muse speaking through you. And I was like, come on, that's a little bit, or you know what I mean? It's just a little bit frou-frou. I don't know what the word is, but
it's supernatural or something.
I think something just didn't sit right with me about it. But then I've slowly learned over time that, you know what, even if you don't completely believe that 100% that that's what's really happening, allowing that to be your mindset in approaching the thing allows you to, like you said, go through ups and downs, but still produce.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of like coming up with things to believe that help you get work done. And if you
totally 100%.
Yeah, like the idea, like the muse speaking through you, I don't know. I think sometimes I feel like when I do music, it's like I found it, you know, like it like I'm swinging a net and I caught this song that was like already there and it just kind of unfolded before me. And other times you feel
Right.
like you have this square block and it's going in this circle hole no matter what. And you got your hammer out and you're really building and forcing it.
Right.
I don't know what it really is, if it's you're really building it or if it's like you're finding it or it's some weird combination of both. And sometimes I like to alter my beliefs a little bit to fit whatever I need to hear.
Right. Which is, I guess, part of being a creative person is almost fooling yourself into doing it, you know?
Yeah.
Finding ways to fool yourself a bit.
I think I play a lot of tricks on myself with my thinking for like those kinds of things. And it's, I don't know, it seems to work, but it's important to have like, to recognize, I guess, the way you think about things and how much it has an effect on what you're able to do.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's such a like mental game of chess. It's almost as much, in a lot of ways, I think like making music is almost as much a mental game with yourself as it is like understanding the technical aspects of it. I mean,
oh yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, if we're honest, I mean, if you have any modern day recording software and any decent piece of gear, like, you're going to get a recording that sounds pretty good no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean,
something that's usable. Yeah.
Yeah, it might not be, it's not going to be necessarily professional quality, but it's going to sound a lot better than like it would have 30 years ago like, you know, when I was younger with a cassette 4-track, like it was very important that you did everything right in each stage for a clean recording to happen. Now, like, you can get away with a lot before it, it sounds unacceptable.
You can see here that, yeah, totally. And I mean, like, I will admit, I'll be the first to admit that I'm sloppy sometimes. You can see the place I'm recording it. It's like there's stuff everywhere. And then, you know, I'll sometimes on purpose, and I'm sure you've done this too, I'll play my guitar on the other side of the room, or, you know, I'll leave the window open so you can hear the car go by, or whatever it is. I love being sloppy, and that's okay. And we're lucky to live in this time because we can be a bit sloppy and get away with it a bit, you know?
Yeah, I agree. We do kind of have like a lucky thing with that.
Yeah, totally.
I was working on a project years ago. This is like when I first started getting into like a little more serious recording, and I had ADAT machines, which I don't know if you ever used those. They were digital recording. It was VCR tapes, literally. Like you could use VCR tapes in them. And
right.
I was very obsessed with like trying to get the recording right, to mic position, and EQing, compressing, going. I had all this like stuff I was trying to do. This is before I had any kind of computers, and I found that like really got in my way, and sometimes didn't even lead to a better sounding recording anyway, because I didn't really know what I was doing.
Right.
So I kind of said to myself, look, I want to make an album, and I'm not going to worry about how good it comes out, because like I got a lot of good stuff. It's going to sound pretty good. It's going to sound better than what I used to have. So I made that decision to just not sweat the quality of the recording too much. And it allowed me to get done. It allowed me to move forward and not obsess over it. Like I did a nice guitar take, but I don't like the like tone because the mic was in the wrong spot. I just didn't even worry about it. And
yeah, totally. You want it? Sorry.
Yeah, it's just like I was trying to do too many jobs, none of which I was any good at. So I just picked the one that I felt like I was the best at, which was like playing the songs, and just make that happen and let everything else just be whatever it was.
Do you want to know the really funny thing about that story?
What's that?
I'm looking in my plugins library here. I've got a folder called Afro DJ Mac.
Nice.
And somewhere in there is like a VHS emulator plugin that I use all the time.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So poor younger Afro DJ Max is trying to make it work with these ADAT machines. Meanwhile, I'm using a plugin to make it sound like those old machines.
That is funny. Like, I mean,
older Afro DJ Mac. Yeah.
Yeah, I like go for the sounds that I used to try to get away from, like whether it's like a tape hiss or, all the things that like I struggled against are now kind of like things I long for a little bit.
Yeah, totally. That's funny.
Yeah, I guess
that's awesome.
Tastes change and it's all flexible. But I mean, at that point though, to be fair, I guess, it was like a detriment to the recording. Now it's like a fun little flavor. Totally.
We have the option now. Yeah. We have the clean, and we can make it dirty, whereas before it was dirty, and
we could kind of crank it into
desperately
taste
to be clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can put like a dry wet. It's only like 20% crappy like it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's it. You only want 20% crappy. Then it's perfect. Yeah.
So
that's funny.
Do you have for your goals with the site, do you have a like projected timeline to reach say phase 2, for instance, or is that just kind of as it comes?
I'm trying pretty actively not to say when goals happen, but to have goals in place. Mm-hmm. So I really and this is also just partly because of who I am. And like we've talked about, I've got other commitments in my daily life and my job and all that stuff. This is my passion, but it's my side hustle that I want to keep there. So yeah, I think in the next couple months, hopefully this thing is, right now it's something that I've started that isn't exactly what I want it to be yet. I want people to be able to have a subscription and go and use the library as much as they want and all that stuff. But I can't, essentially I have to invest time in building that. And I can't really invest that time at the moment. So I'm hoping that eventually it gets there in the next year or so, to be this thing that I initially envisioned. But again, there's that vision and we're approaching it. And if it doesn't get there, if it takes 2 years to get there, that's pretty okay too. Like we talked about before, it's the long game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Well, that's cool. I mean,
it's less about,
yeah, at least you don't have that feeling of like I failed if I don't finish it by like January or something like that.
That's it. Yeah. And like we said, I think that there's something to be said for starting before you're ready. And I've heard that a lot in a lot of things that I listen to and read and stuff now. But there's also something to be said for not pushing too fast to be realistic, basically, about what this is going to be. Because I see a lot of people who are super talented, who are super driven, and then it just gets burned out because it's just like there's so much pressure to be like, you had an idea yesterday. Well, why isn't that a business today? And why aren't you successful?
Right.
And why aren't you in the newspaper? And it's like, man,
Yeah.
you're gonna like that's just not a healthy way to do things, in my opinion. It's a quick way to burn out, basically.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the important lessons come along the way. And if you don't have the time to
Right.
experience them little by little, you get sort of like that, maybe like that child actor syndrome type thing where, you know, you've blown up to superstardom at age 7 and all these things are happening to you before you even understand how to read or something. You know what I mean? Like this idea, like sometimes when things happen too fast, it's easy to make major mistakes and cause yourself a lot of difficulties too.
And also, like you've said, it's almost impossible to enjoy any of it. It's
Yeah.
You know, it's just too much. I don't know. I think I think it's always a little bit of a balance between pushing yourself hard enough so that you're not just procrastinating and not pushing yourself so hard that you're about to snap.
Right. I've heard people look back on their careers a lot and say things like, you know, I just wish I would have enjoyed it more. I wish I would have taken a moment and instead of being stressed, just like enjoyed it. So I think that's some good way to look at it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Which again is, you're lucky if you can, but if you are that lucky, then try and do it. Make a point of doing it, I guess.
Right. Well, sometimes I guess the point of that is like, you know, just because it's not the full-time hustle, that's not, there are benefits to it not being the full-time hustle too. Yeah,
fair enough. Yep.
Cool, Christopher. Listen, it was really nice talking to you, and I'm really happy for your work, and it's nice to see someone that's making their passion work for them and finding ways to do something they enjoy that's fulfilling to them and still have a life.
Right on. I don't know if I do have a life because I end up doing this stuff all the time, but you know, I'll take it.
Right. Yeah, you have a life. So is there anyone you want to direct, any place you want to direct people to besides the site? We've got soundslikeanearful.com. Anywhere else to find you, learn more about what you're doing?
Soundslikeanearful.com is the main place. Go there and check out some music, and hopefully some of it can be useful to you. But if you want to get a hold of me, I think I'm mostly active on Twitter. I have an Instagram, but you can probably find me easiest on Twitter, which is, the handle there is sounds_earfuls, because Sounds Like an Earful is a bit too long. So yeah, you can get at me there, and I'm happy to have a chat or
Cool.
Anything you like.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really cool site.
Cool.
The layout is great. I can definitely see the graphic design background at work there. Real clean and nice and easy to follow. Cool. Anything else for the legion of listeners before we go?
No, I mean, mostly just thanks for having me on. I've been, like I said, I've been listening, I've been following you as Afro DJ Mac for a long time, and kind of catching up on the podcast the last couple of months, and it's great, man. I think it's really cool. Like I said, I love the episodes where it's just kind of you talking and thinking out loud a little bit, but in a way that is just like, there's things that you'll say and I'll be like, yes, I've had that thought too. So obviously the interviews are great too. So yeah, cheers. I think it's great, and it's good to chat with you.
Cool. Well, thank you, Christopher. And thank you all for listening to the Music Production Podcast. This is Brian Funk, Afro DJ Mac, and we've been talking to Christopher Postill. He's got soundslikeanearful.com, a really cool site that offers music for, I guess, anyone that has a creative project that needs some music, some sound, and it's all designed by somebody in that world on both ends, as the working musician and as someone that has needed sound himself. So it's very fairly priced and high quality stuff. Definitely worth checking out. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christopher. And we'll say our goodbyes, and then we'll wrap it up after that. So take care, everybody.